With Miranda Kahn, J.D. Hayworth welcoming you back to Newsmax Prime. Government spending and waste at its highest with $18 trillion in national debt, which of course has led to congressional budget mandates.
Yeah, a new report says the Army is set to announce 40,000 troops will be discharged to comply with congressional budget mandates. The Army has already laid off 80,000 troops, but many are saying it's the best place to cut funds to lay off more troops.
Well, let's talk to a guy who spent a fair amount of time in the United States Army before being elected to Congress from Oklahoma. He's Congressman Steve Russell, retired lieutenant colonel from the Army. He joins us via telephone from Capitol Hill. Steve, your reaction when you heard there were going to be more, in essence, layoffs of troops?
I think that we've already reached a point with our land component, both the United States Army and the Marine Corps, where we have cut too deeply to meet our international commitments and defense of the nation. It's the lowest point that we have seen in raw numbers since prior to World War II. And if you think about that, we had 180 million souls in 1940 and about 400,000 troops. Now, here we are with 320 million souls or something close to, and then we have 490 going down to 450 in raw numbers. Percentage-wise, it's just staggering and astounding that we would cut trained soldiers that it takes years to bring back on the force.
And with the threat of ISIS growing, are we making ourselves more vulnerable?
Well, we certainly are, because we see that people realize that we're strapped in commitments globally, and you have regional players that know that now's the time. We've seen that with Crimea and Ukraine actions by Russia. We've seen Iran with its rampant proliferation of terror and unrest in the Middle East. We've seen ISIS uniting themselves with ideologies all across the North African rim. These are all problems, and in fact, the American public are not blind. Foreign policy now is a greater concern than the economy on both political parties right now.
Well, Steve, let's talk more about ISIS. The Defense Secretary, Ash Carter, was on Capitol Hill Tuesday and got an earful from my old Arizona colleague, Senator John McCain, on the lack of progress made with training fighters there in Syria. Let's listen to the exchange, then we want to get your reaction to it.
Now, you mentioned we are currently training about 60 fighters. I got to tell you, after 4 years, Mr. Secretary, that's not a very impressive number. Is that fair to these young men to say, we are sending you in to fight ISIS only, and by the way, we will decide on the policy whether to defend you if you are barrel bombed?
They know that we will provide support to them.
Steve, you hear that, and we're mindful of the fact, they set aside $500 million to train only 60 fighters? Does that make any sense at all?
In fact, I've been very critical of Secretary Carter and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs on the House floor a couple of weeks ago about the complete lack of vision for an ISIS strategy. Secretary Carter, he complains that he can't find people that are willing to fight, and that this somehow accounts for the lack of trainable people. Well, newsflash, there are thousands of people willing to fight. The problem is that they're in the Kurdish resisting forces, or they're Sunni Arabs that are disenfranchised that do not want to be ISIS. And we need to have a strategy that looks at some type of federation that has a place for these disenfranchised population elements to go, arm them, equip them, and then let's get control of the situation over ISIS, and then we can put together some stability in Iraq. I no longer believe, and after years of defending it, I no longer believe, as of January, that we can have an accommodated Baghdad government that will have a place for the Sunni Arab and the Kurd to go.
Congressman, with less than a minute remaining, we want to talk about your Waste Watch report, where you actually break down what the government is wasting its money on. What was the most shocking wasteful spending report you found?
Well, I think the two biggest black holes in government right now are Afghanistan and also the VA. The VA, the military wanted to do records transfer to see if they could do some type of seamless system with their medical records, so as soldiers transition out. $1 million spent, and the VA says can't be done. Money's gone.
Wow. Well, we got to get a hold of the money, get an accounting of it, and figure out how on earth this money is being spent. And Steve Russell, we thank you for your Waste Watch document, also for your service on Capitol Hill, and of course your service in the United States Army, because you know whereof you speak on all these topics. Now, we heard from Congressman Russell. What is your take on what he had to say? Love to hear from you. You can email me, Facebook me, tweet me. That sounds kind of interesting. Or you go to newsmaxtv.com/comments to get your point of view to us. We're coming back with more.